Let's try this again, see if that works. Oh, okay. So, I'm not sure whether the first one did anything, but welcome to Monday. It's exactly 11 o'clock, so I'm on time. Well, it's 11:02, it's 11, something around 11 o'clock. So, welcome to the programming streaming day. Backup RMTP server worked most effectively with OBS, which I'm using. Previous one, Super, did not. It's because I'm using a stream key rather than I was having a lot of difficulty connecting YouTube to OBS, so we're doing it kind of old school. And on those grounds, let's do a big old chat window. Set that up, and we should be good to go. So this is kind of like warming up for the music streams, because the system that I'm operating under is less and less reachable by any information coming in from YouTube side. Like the way I'm able to use it, I can't really make it work in such a way that I can see much data coming back from YouTube at all. I can't coherently tell whether or not I'm getting viewers or anything of this sort. So this is just rapidly going in the direction of doing the little camera stuff here with my little microphone. The other day I spent some time hooking up the mixing desk to cables that run directly into the ATEM at line level. So I'll be able to share my raw mix coming out of that. And I'm gearing up towards the music streaming thing. And Monday continues to be the answering questions and coding stuff. So I've got my little scrolling thing. That's actually not going to be the case on music streaming days. I'm not sure what I'll do. It will be music streaming days is going to be, the studio and its ability to switch around like that. And I'm setting up for, this is going to be a drum room. It isn't yet, but I'm putting stuff in place towards being able to do a drum room camera, at which point I'll be kind of running around like a combination recording studio and radio station. Because the way it's going to work, unless I do something interesting like Discord chat, I bet you I could set something up so like my Eurorack, speaking of which, it's always fun having that blinking away in the background. Let's turn it on. I enjoy the blinking lights. Let's make more blinking lights. So the idea will be doing studio recordings and basically having the studio computer up and running, and just jumping into Reaper and doing something. I'm getting closer and closer to just throwing up my hands, giving up the idea of doing a video, coming up with some kind of poster frame, some kind of image, and posting the song that you've been hearing for the last, months, as a way of putting that behind me and going on with other stuff. That's probably what's going to happen, because as much as I can set stuff up to do some cool videos, I've moved past this song. This song doesn't represent where I'm at anymore, so I kind of need to put it out and be done with it. And the music streaming stuff is going to be kind of like this. I will have the opportunity of talking to the stream in a couple of different ways. One way is if I have this patched through into the mixing board, I'll be able to talk to the vocal mic. I'm probably not going to do vocals live, but maybe I could. I don't know. It'll be pretty weird because you'll hear all of the uncorrected, untuned whatsoever. But you'll also be able to watch what that process actually is doing it. And the other way is what I'm talking into right now, which is a microphone. You're hearing the microphone of this camera. Hi, Zoom logo. But it's mostly about this microphone. And at any point I can turn that on and sort of talk into the void, as it were. But the music stream is not really going to primarily be about that. I might forget for long periods of time that I'm even streaming, because the whole thing is about setting up the streaming thing so that I can just sort of turn it on, like I said, hit a power strip, and then it's up and running, and I can get that going while doing anything else around here. Well, almost anything else around here. Can't get too naughty around here while doing live streaming. But for today, since this is in fact a coding stream day, I'll keep an eye out for live chat. I have no way of telling anything else. Like, you'll have to speak up in chat and then wait for me to notice. That is kind of like what the music streams will be, only those will be even more so. But yeah, I just don't have good ways of getting information back. I know of, like, there are things that people do. For instance, I've mentioned how I'm a big fan of Loading Ready Run, and they have a tendency of, when they're doing streams, they've got a big old monitor set up. It's not necessarily a high quality monitor, but it's a big old monitor. And it is set up in portrait mode rather than landscape mode. And they've got a computer that is running and putting just chat. And anywhere I can run YouTube, in theory, I should be able to, I got to check and see whether my chat is the same each time. I'll do a little screenshot right there because it shows my chat's URL. If the URL is the same time I got it made, because all I got to do is run any web browser, including something off of like a Raspberry Pi, and run that as a chat-only thing and put it up somewhere I can see it, like back there where there's a blank space. And then chat will be, or up here facing where I'm looking. And then that can like sit in the same power strip and be a sort of low power chat server kind of screen thing that will automatically play back whatever is going on in chat without me having to deal with it. But I still won't be able to know how many people are there. And honestly, that's less and less of a concern, because what I do is apparently not really about having lots of people. It's about what I can do for whatever people are in fact there or paying attention. And here is a start. We're going to get into a little bit of coding and see whether I can get any of my stuff working better than I did last week. And since it's not a music making chat, I will see whether I can keep a running conversation going. again, the eventual music streaming thing is going to just wander away from that point where I won't be talking to, I'll be able to, but mostly I won't. But for now, and for Mondays, because I think that it's good to be able to be available for when people do have a question of some kind, we're going to jump into where I left off with K-Chamber. K-Chamber AR. Technically, it could be just K-Chamber A, but this be K-Chamber AR. Let's see. There it is. And what I had going on is a way in which I didn't have anything even close to this sound. And I'm exploring some ideas around that. One of them is that I need to have more sustain, so we're going to increase this as I go. In particular, we're gonna double the amount of regeneration I can get and just quickly check and see whether that's working. Boop. And having done that, it's time to explore once again the world of where I left off, where I did not finish this plugin. I did not get it done. Instead, I got this. I got enough reverb. That's for damn sure. So let's not do that again. But that's the zone I needed to get into to do what I was going to try to do. I don't even remember what the hell input pad does. It does something. Well, that was cool. I'm not quite sure what that did either. Let's go find out. Without actually recoding it, let's look at what that did. Ah, Steed Regen. I had the tape echo thing, although that is also not very well refined. But the tape echo thing was in fact a thing. And the other regen has been modified until it sustains the way that I need. What I was thinking was this. We experience acoustic reverb as an auditory experience, much like we experience things like sitting in the room if somebody's playing drums. But when you record it, the result's very different. The result is kind of like, hang on a second. Bear with me for a moment. I'm just thinking of ways in which I can make my job easier when I start turning this into a hard-coded number. If I boost this to 0.05, quit out of here, because I was getting way more regeneration than I really needed, and I had been needing to boost it. So, going back to here, well, hey, that's almost perfect. Now there are things that still need to be dealt with here. We're not even close to what the sound of that plate, that chamber sounds like. But this is getting in the zone. So we've got pre-delay. That's going to need some work. I'm also wondering whether this is strictly pre-delay or whether this is giving me pre-delay from the chamber feeding back in, because that wouldn't be great. All very good fun, but we're trying to get this to a different place, and one of the things we got to do is start investigating the various options for the internal sort of chamber code in here. Some of them are going to sound better than others. And our goal, of course, is to do this sound. From this. So yeah, we are 1,000,000 miles away from that, but even if I can't get it by the end of today, I can at least get closer. Even the modifications that I made were closer, but here's a thing. Let's do this and then stop it and investigate. 0.5. And we can see how this is making a noise, although it's not a good noise. But the sound that we were comparing it to is not actually the Abbey Road stage system or anything of the sort. It's literally the sound of that room. No speakers, no microphones, no tape echo, nothing. And that's what I'm going to try to get in the zone. So let's look at what the shape of our decay looks like. Now that's a little louder, so that might be something to look into. In fact, one thing we could do is cut the volume, more or less the same thing as bit shift gain, doing that, and then we'll try that again. And we've got these two different things. So they don't sound anything alike, but we're starting to get closer to the amount of decay we need. So let's assume we're going to want slightly less. And apply that, and the thing I'm going to try to point out here is we have a phenomenon that is interesting that's showing up. And I am not sure how much of this has to do with the acoustic properties of air as opposed to this algorithm, and how much has to do with the recording qualities of the recording chain being done when this actual recording was done, because now that's slightly edited, but we can see how fast it falls away. And if we look closely at the decays, what we see is that the real one is not falling away in as much of an exponential fashion, whereas the algorithm is. The algorithm is falling away in a kind of an exponential fashion. It's a little messier. It's not, we're going to explore a little bit different algorithms, ones that'll be more appropriate, but the actual decay time is not the same. And this is off of the same clap in both cases. So here is the question. What do we got to do to make the decay fall off in the same way? And I think the answer is going to be one of the things I was doing in the plates. And I think this might be more a factor of little small rooms like that, because one of the characteristics of smaller rooms that are that live is you're overloading the air much harder than you think. Like if the decay doesn't fall away, a clap can be a fairly loud sound. It's just very, very quick. So if the sound doesn't fall away, then sort of the saturation of the actual air is greater. And this is not unlike what I was doing with the plate, where I had a curve built into it. So the next logical thing, apart from not saving, actually we can do something here. Let's take this little piece of clap and apply another plugin and save it as such. Our favorite plugin that we, hello, why do I not see you? Must have just fallen off. Here is the VST version. There you go. Because we were having to drop it back in volume to make it a comparable volume, and that's also going to help with having this sound like it's meant to sound. And then we're going to go back to here and open up one of our plates. And if I'm not mistaken, nope, gain in, out, and out are, I believe those are in fact associated with the compression. So assuming we've kept those, so I know I took it out. I remember I took that out. Yep, that's the compression. Its default value is 1, and it becomes smaller if we compress. So what I need to do is go and find my output compression, which is here. And we want to see whether that gives us, or do we in fact already have that going? Looks like we already have that in there. Interesting. We've got that in there and it still isn't doing what I thought it was going to. So that's interesting. Let's find out what we do need to do in order to make it work nicely. Must have been even more extreme before I tried that. I've forgotten that I tried that. Let's alter this gain stuff. It's going to be me just like speak up if there's anything that you want to ask about or if there are other plugins going on. I can't tell whether I'm even streaming successfully. Yay, being YouTube streamer person. But if somebody says something in chat, I will probably see it, unless that's broken too. We'll find out. And let's quickly find out whether I have a decay that looks more like the real thing. And you know, I think we do. It's now become far too slow. That's interesting. So let's edit that. And also, it's all slightly too quiet, so let's fool with the amplification a little bit. If we wanted to get a cleaner one, we could just take it off of the beginning of this again. And now we know that it's going to be too slow of a decay. It's got to fall off a little faster than that. Hey, I'm glad to hear that the stream is fine and not broken. It's going to be even worse when I'm doing music streaming, I'll tell you. And now we have 2 decays. This might still be a little bit too quiet and a little bit too long. Because the whole character of the sound is going to change around a lot as I start fooling with it more. But for the time being, let's it's sort of a half bit shift gain. So the kind of thing we're fooling around with here is, first of all, getting this to work. If we can make this be the right kind of sound, to match that other sound, then we'll have the starters of our chamber. As we increase stereo flips, that is how many of the output combs are feeding back into the beginning again, and whether they're crossing from left to right or vice versa. That becomes built into the algorithm once I'm finished. And that's kind of interesting. Let's cut reso right down. I know that has to do with the tape delay, but I'm not so worried about that at the moment. We've stolen one of those bands and put it on the tape delay. But what we need to do now is compare the different potential algorithms we can use. Hey, from Vietnam. And stereo flips is part of this. See, it's giving us very different sounds, and we're going to want a lot of stereo flips because this is a chamber. There's no way that it can persist with stereo sounds very effectively. the sounds are going to become a very mono-like thing real quick. Kind of like that. But we have a distinct sound when we're not doing it. And for each one, it's going to be a slightly different characteristic going on. Although I'm going to say 3, 4, and 5 are probably the ones I'm going to want. So the next thing to do, if I want to be nice to this computer, one thing I could do is plug a USB cable between this and this little stand, because the little stand this is on has a fan. It's kind of a noisy fan, but it'll help keep this cool. This laptop gets overstrained. It is running sort of the full-on reverb at this time. So one thing I could do, first of all, let's close this. Cancel. This is the right volume level, so I'm going to want to save that again too. And let's go back to the H file. Was I trying the ones that I had actually? Yes, it looks like I had. See here where it says early and then chamber test. Early here represents the early reflections, which is not necessarily even a thing. Like, early reflections don't have a lot to do with a chamber this small. It essentially means it's going to try to emulate sounds that are bouncing off of objects like 2 feet from the clap and 4 feet from the clap and so on. Early reflections are going to be more useful to me when I'm doing a much larger reverb where all of the echoes wind up so far away that you've essentially got a pre-echo going on. Hey, Lorenzo. So I'm probably going to leave early reflections out for this one. In fact, I'm not sure I'm using them. Maybe I am. Let's actually actively choose to not use them. We can make this chamber all the more efficient by having it be basically the tape effect, and then just the householder matrix, because the early reflections are not going to be particularly useful at all. They're just happening too fast. And the way this stuff is designed, I get the early reflections, and then I'm not feeding them into the actual reverb. Like if I'm using it as all passes, I'll feed that into the actual reverb. And that's how the plates were made. That's what gave them their sound. But this needs to be a carefully chosen variation on one of these chamber generators. So I need to generate what the early reflections would be. I can put it right back to the example 1 here. While I'm testing, something needs to be here. But I want to investigate what these ones are. And you'll notice that at the bottom of this page, I've got a small box of rock here. That's because at the end of last stream, I realized that all of these were so short that they were unbearable. That said, I'm wondering whether I can select one that's going to be good. We were just hearing number 4, and these are all called Abbey Road chamber tests. So my next job here is to define and name them. We will leave early reflections off. We'll build with it using this example of a set of delay constants. Copy that in here. Open up the claps again. Remind ourselves we're looking for a sound kind of like that. And we're probably not going to get it, but what do we get? We have a raw sound that doesn't have any attenuation, and that's part of how we're going to dial in the tone. But for the moment, we have a really yucky kind of clang. But remember, when I change stereo flips, it becomes wildly different. So what do we get? It really kind of feels like it's too small. One thing about it, though, is since it is so quick, even a small amount of stereo flips is quickly going to merge both of those channels because the time we're working in is so fast, so fast. So do any of these sound like anything? And what can I do here? Low cut doesn't do much for me. I was hearing a lot of very high frequency sounds. So one thing I could do, this is in kilohertz essentially, so I can have them all be 1K. And then just continue to tighten it. And as we tighten that up, we get the same clang, but we're doctoring it. So let's take it down to here. We can still hear the nastiness. Interestingly, if we use mulch, since this falls off so quick, that does a pretty good job of cutting back the highs. It's really aggressive that way. Like a big difference between this and this. So stereo flips, we want to figure out what's going on here. This sounds very unpleasant. So just all of these will sound pretty unpleasant. That's worse. Oh, that's appalling. I think maybe I'm gonna call that clangy. It's just bad. But I'm also going to leave that where it will start up again. Clangy box tiny. That doesn't sound very appealing, does it? Well, it's not. But that's what we learned. And now we're going to investigate. What did I have that on? 3? And also, I believe, 5. Now we've got another one to investigate. Excuse me. I'm going to be a good boy and leave off at a reasonable time today. Trying to get rolling so that I can actually do some progress. Sorry about that. Without having to go for 3 and 4 hours and stuff like that. That doesn't work out very well for me. So here is a second one. Again, we want this. And a lot of it is going to be our filtering. Most of this is not going to be just only the algorithm. Nice solid sound there. So when we go into this new one, we're going to get another pile of ugly sound. But how is that going to be different? Oh, I need to update this. I had said 3, but that's actually 2 showing there. Back to this. So when we do this, we're getting sort of the same amount of decay that we want. Unfortunately, we're getting that super metallic sound even with mulch engaged. If we take it out, just a real nasty clang, so we'll leave it in. So this is showing us what's happening in the low frequencies, and we're trying to get to that sort of kind of sound. With no stereo flips, this is not great. That's maybe not that terrible. Hard to tell, really. That's kind of bad. Horrible. 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 You can kind of hear the clangy little noise there. It's like that's the kind of stuff I'm going to try to avoid. It's kind of worthwhile learning that this is so sensitive to stereo flips and mulch. Like, I'm probably going to end up having to alter it in such a way that I can dial in partial mulch on just one stage, because such a small amount is having such a big effect. I hardly even need the filters. The biquads could be left out of this little sucker. So with no mulch, hello. That's interesting. Last ones are still rubbish. So we have that big jump of mid-range in there. This sort of obnoxious honk, but in this one, I think 2 and 3 did something useful. Like, you might even be able to make that work. That's almost not a million miles away from what it's supposed to do. It's too bright, and then one stage of mulch is too dark. But there's something going on there with our increased compression on the output of it, where that does have a kind of smoothness. It's like not a million miles away from what the chamber sounded like. So let's see, here's 2. And then 3 is kind of more featureless, but there's something on the low end that I don't like. Still, we got something going on there. Here's our pre-delay. And there is our tape effect, except for we don't really have the tape effect sounding very tapey because it is one of the Q bands. Oh, I've just screwed up. I shouldn't have touched that one. This is the one I wanted to take back. So yeah, we are trying to get a sound that echoes like I have in this recording of somebody clapping their hands in this very special chamber. And this is not great, but it's not a million billion miles away, so we're better off than we were last week. The question is whether this or that is closer than that. Or maybe this. I think 3 is best. I think I'm going to call that like concrete or something. That's a really unpleasant sound. But hey, we are exploring, we are experimenting. Got to try to find something that'll work. What was that again? Close it immediately, forgot what I was doing. 3, I liked 3. Because we're trying to do this. Actually, now that I listen to it, that's obnoxious too. That has a low frequency thing going on that is not nice. The well, further exploration. Next, we need to explore this one, which I don't think we really seriously got into. We didn't even get far enough with this last time. And that is most definitely because we did not have the sustain working. So the sustain was so wrong that everything else was no good either. But now that we don't have a... wait. Hang on. Okay, forgive me, I've screwed up. Do you see the problem I made? I have a simple change to do here as follows. This is the one we're hearing. I didn't actually change it. That's good news because it means I have more chances to get it right. These don't matter. We're not listening to this at all. This is kind of like adjusting an EQ that's not patched in. So yeah, I was all getting fussy about that, but what I should have done, left this alone. Now we have two settings for that, because that is the one that is functional. Now let's see whether these ones are significantly different in doing anything useful. The pre-delays are patched out right now. So we have more chances to find one that doesn't suck. That's good news. It was a good mistake because I basically found 2 and 5 and 3 all to be more or less acceptable, not knowing that I was on the same one the whole time. Now we should have a very different one. And I think we do. I think we do. So, stereo flips. This is the part where, again, we don't want that. It sounds like we hit a giant broken cowbell. Terrible. But we have a whole new set of things we can find for what might work. And that ain't half bad. But mulch is way too strong again. We'll drop Reso right down. It's as good as taking it out entirely. And then we're going to want to use a tiny little bit of mulch, like crossfaded in there. And what do we have in stereo flips for this one? 0 is garbage. Yeah, medium garbage. Not too bad at 2. Oh, hello, interesting. 3. 4 is garbage, and 5 is garbage. So it's looking like 2 and 3, and not 4. I heard this sort of unpleasant woody ringing in here. But that sounds like clap echoes. So I think which 3 we want out of this one. And of course, we're going to want to mulch it a little bit. The problem with mulch in this one, we can make it even brighter. This N10K LP stages is averaging, and that's pre and post. Maybe this will do the job of the mulch. Okay, you know what? We've gotten far out enough that we can actually compare this to the real thing. This is going to be still kind of horrifying, but switch bypass on and off. pretty bad when we combine them, but there's not a lot of lows on that hand clap. No, terrible. What if we have a little mulch? We got a little more sustain than we need. But yeah, a fair bit of this. Maybe, I know I'm not doing much with these filters, but if I drop them a little bit, let's do even less with them. Let's name this. I think we were on 3. That was the best we were able to get out of that. Each of these are going to be distinctly different. I'm just searching as hard as I can for something that will have the same general vibe as that particular room, which is not an easy task, but a little patience maybe will get us there. Because if we can do that, then we get to have the chamber. Number 3. See, I'm not very a fan of that, but maybe stereo flips will give us something interesting. So that's terrible. That kind of builds up quickly. That's not totally horrible. They're all a little tiny bit horrible. That's no good. I'm kind of wondering a little bit whether I can take a bigger chunk of this and have it do something useful. I'm doing a low cut as hard as I can tell that. Having only the onset of the clap makes it sound kind of like you're hitting a stick. And I'm a little frustrated with that. Let's put this aside for the moment and get closer to that onset. And here's how we do it. Copy this guy, paste it over where this lived. And now we're going to take this reverb stuff and aggressively make it go away with some fades. See, it's a very high frequency sound. And then we'll fade it again right at the end. And then we had attenuated it a tiny bit, so we're going to do that too. That's maybe a little bit more like what that clap sounds like, although I think we're starting to get early reflections. I'm pretty sure that the chamber is so tiny that we really quickly start getting early reflections, but that's got more uncharacteristic of the actual clap. So we might be in with the chance of having it be a little bit more like the, let's find out. Still sounds kind of mechanical to me, but we might be closer. Sustain. What shall we call this? Feels like a pool cue somehow. And is it one I wanted? Interesting. No. Oh God, no. No. So this is not good. Terrible. Awful. Yeah, this one's going to struggle because what I'm working with is this. So like anything I can do with the crossovers is still going to struggle. That's just too horrible. And full crossover ain't much better. think that sounded about as good as anything. So 3. We are going to save that. And on to our final one that's generated at this very small size. I ran for ages and ages trying to generate these things, and they're all of this incredibly tiny size. So I can look into this other one, although I'll have to change many things about it. In theory, this should be using the right time constants for this kind of thing. Let's find out. Oh, we haven't quit. Back into the breach. Let's see what we get. And one more of these guys. It does this. Ooh, that's kind of yucky. I'm not sure if I like that. So that's pretty terrible. That's just quicker. See, it has like roughly the right density, but it's just all clang. It's terrible. Don't need that. Three's probably my best bet for most of these. It seems to generally work out best for most of these guys. We'll see. Just having stray thoughts. Trying to figure out what I'm doing. I call that brass box. That's how bad it is. Yeah, everything wants to be 3. So concrete box, narrow wood box, pool hall, or brass box. See what happens when we go back to the first one. This is also kind of like torture testing for it. I'm doing the most difficult possible scenario. See, I'm not sure I'm happy with that sound. What do we get if we just filter it way up high? Hey, Fotis, back into the matrix indeed. This is a particularly problematic matrix, I must say. Still, we can but try. So that really kind of didn't work, but we had this one that we were calling narrow wood box. If I build that, I think we can discard brass box. In fact, that was so terrible, we can discard it so hard that I can comfortably just delete it. Like, goodbye, don't need you. But this one that we called narrow wood box, what does that mean practically? We could steal the Studio B claps. That might also be an interesting thing, because this is a clap and it's meant to be exactly the same as this because it's the same clap for the echo and the trigger for this. But for the other one, you could isolate the claps much better, and that might be more relevant. So firstly, so that's kind of interesting. I don't get anything like the same low frequency behavior. Oh, but band A through D starts out high and then goes lower if these claps don't sound right. Maybe it's because I have mulch on. I mean, I will accept getting something that sounds like it works. It's just both frustrating and interesting to have a literal sound recorded in the correct place that does this. Like, that really shows you what it's meant to be. So if we had something going on, like for instance a drum kit, and we threw this just as it stands onto that, we do get something happening. It's just really ugly. Don't like that ring. Interesting. still kind of obnoxious, I must say. We're not done. I wonder if increasing the low cut would help. Our low end is garbage. The low end is so bad. Let's play with some of these other ones while we're at it, just to see what we get. So we had that was narrow wood box. But if we tried the same thing on pool hall, it could just end up with needing to generate a whole new set of somewhat larger ones. Because what's causing these noisy honks is that the dimensions, it's like we have the drum kit built into an ISO box, which is about 5 foot by 5 foot, with more sustain than a real thing could possibly have. Like, you can't have that level of low frequency honk in an acoustic space. It will distort the walls and dissipate faster. Yeah, I know, right? It's terrible. Well, it's terrible because we're not done. We're still fooling around with this stuff. Here's another option. Huh, is it subtitling me? That's interesting. YouTube's got a YouTube, I guess. So our lows are still terrible. It's seizing onto sustaining noises and emphasizing them. And that's because all the dimensions are just too small. They're like crushing you. Kind of cool in a horrible way. Like, you could have a terrible chamber do this. So yeah, one day people will be taping these streams just so that they can make jams out of stuff like that. And it'll be like, oh hey, can I use this thing that I grabbed off your live stream? And it's like, okay, there you go. I didn't record it, so you have the only copy of that. The weird like frequency stuff that was going on. And part of the reason that's happening is because those sound far too small, so I need to edit something. I need to make a note to that effect, which is going to be on my reverbs thing here. And we're going to quit out of here. So Abbey Road Chamber. And making it claim to be about 60 milliseconds is clearly way too small. So we're going to move that. So we're shooting for something that sounds more like a 21 by 12 foot room. That did not sound anything like a 21 by 12 foot room. So it's time to start exploring some of these other possibilities. Here are some of the, well, no, these are the early reflections. What do we actually want? Kettlebell was garbage. Let's explore some of these as we continue looking around. I do have small box of rock. Let's slowly take these away. I'm probably not going to want kettlebell, but you know what? Let's grab all of them. And build them into this. I'm just not happy with them. So not happy with that we're going to ignore it. Ooh, I do have an adjustment to make though. My oh, no, that's part of the pre-echo. Hey MM, hope you liked the huge video. It's a medium huge video, I suppose. You know, one of the things I am hoping to do when I do the studio streaming, and I'm looking to start doing this soon, when I'm able to put out a song, I'm going to go into the raw tracks, just dump out a bunch of tracks, and then isolate particular things, like this was a kick drum recording, or this was the synth kick drum off of the Eurorack, and that just repeats throughout the entire thing. So I will have one kick of that, and I'll put it as a sort of sample pack of like, this is what was inside this track. You know, that, some of the guitar stuff, some of the bass notes, anything that actually seems like it came off well. And may or may not include voices, depends upon whether I like it or not. But I'll put out just random chunks of stuff, because some of the things I've been hearing, for instance, in the work of guys like James Blake doing dubstep, excuse me, is these days people can take little tiny samples and make really cool things out of them. And I like that, so I'd like to provide that sort of thing. Let's see, let's do kettlebell. So if I thought this was kettlebell, the ones that I have been doing are just like cowbell. They're that bad. So, excuse me, I'm really going to have to cut this stream short. But while I have not, we've updated this. And now let's explore like what is going to be the right basic range, the right basic size for this stuff to be in. Because I had that. So I can do 34, 37, or 46 milliseconds. It really shouldn't be much larger than that, but I need to dial in what my millisecond results sound like in terms of actual rooms. That's what I'm missing. So let's jump into that. I think we've just made that be a new thing. And if I need to rename this, I can. New sound. now 3 again seems to be a lucky number for these. This is why I called it kettlebell. You can hear a sort of kettle drummy resonance in there. That sounds maybe a little bit too large, but not wildly too large. And we got strange stuff happening in the lows, that's for sure. It's going to want to cut off the lows a lot more aggressively. Yeah, like, here's the problem with this. We've got the decay, and that's just fine. But a little boxy room like that can't store up this much base weight unless it's literally like a vault. Like, there are, and I'd love to try this, maybe I can, there are dance clubs in Germany, or was, like the Tresor Dance Club in Germany back when it existed. The floor was inside the bank's old vault. So when you had it being really loud, and this would be the sound of the Tresor Club being possibly too loud. You had that kind of density of bass, but that's not consistent with what, like the Abbey Road Room. The Abbey Road Room has walls that are not as heavy as a bank vault. So when you store this amount of bass up, it's going to get right out. Which would sound kind of like... Interesting. Doing some more experimenting. Trying to make this sound like that little room. That was fun. Let's see where that took us relative to the claps we started with. Expert mode on. Supposed to make that noise. Not really, but it's got some things going for it. If you want less decay on that since it's larger. So now that we had that fun, let's fool with some of these other ones that are even longer. Oh, the pre-delay, who knows what it is. The pre-delay is part of the Cape Plate stuff. So it goes to about half a second and it's very strangely organized. I wouldn't worry too much about it, Dome Junkie. You're meant to do it by ear anywho. Small box of rock. Now we're going to go through these rather quickly. See what we get. This needs to go a lot quicker. And I think we can bring mulch back into the equation again, because it is so fierce. And that sounds larger. This sounds like a bigger room than that. So we were actually better off with the kettlebell. We just probably need to, I probably need to generate more at this size. So that's going to be the next thing. Maybe we can do that next week. Get the machine going. Really work on generating some of these that'll go smooth and will give me some options as to just, I think kettlebell was so early that, yeah, well, no, it does seem to have a club size, a room size associated with it, but still, this is somewhat general. So these guys are going to be larger. I can demonstrate that before closing this out for the moment. Let's try a little workshop. This one is a 46 millisecond in total. It's the longest delay. I think that's the one I'm measuring. That's also another thing. It's like, no wonder some of the other ones are giving me problems if that's the longest delay. But it should equate to about a 200, 300 seat club. I think maybe that's going to be smaller than I think. So I need to adjust my algorithms for what it's claiming to seem like. Then I'll have new abilities to do this line of thing. Let's do that again. There we go. Hey, monster. And so this is going to be a larger one. And what we're going to find here is that that doesn't sound anything like this sound. He says, wondering whether that's actually true. Let's play with this a little bit. Wouldn't it be funny if I stumbled into the correct one at the last moment? That's often what happens to me. It's like, oh, and now I have to do a long stream because I have this thing that I'm chasing down now. Less of that. This seems okay. Less of that. More of this. Now I'm thinking about how those sounds built up. As you clapped, and then this sort of upper mid-range crunch came in. So what have we got here? Yeah, it doesn't sound anything like that. Interesting. Pretty much, yeah. See, the thing about it is this sound. That's literally Rick Beato clapping his hands in the actual Abbey Road chamber. That's what that is. So it's not going to be the same every which way. And there's going to be a degree of variance. But the idea is if I can make the fake one act like that in some way, then that is a way to start getting towards the sound that actually sounds like that location. And what makes it more awkward is the fact that although I wonder whether I should be bringing those early reflections back. Let's do a little quick experiment, because one of the things that's bothering me about this, Fotis, that's from his most recent video. Have you not seen that video? Rick went to Abbey Road and wandered around and did various things. Like here is, I love him for this. He did very helpful things. Here he is clapping in Studio B. I just edited the hell out of it. And what that is this is a brief little snippet of somebody talking, and in the middle of that he's like, I can't resist. Clap, clap, clap. And that gives me the literal echoes. Like from that first one. Well, there's ist at the same time. But here is the second one. Yep, that is the sound is literally the sound of Studio B with guys in cameras and Rick with a lavalier mic. Nothing special being done to the mic. Oh, I wouldn't be doing that. Don't want to do that. I need to hear as close as I can to what the actual recorded sound would be. Because when you have this, and then you do this, if I can make that have an echo sound that is the same as that, then I'm in like Flynn. I made the sound. So that's what we're doing. And here's one of the things that happened is Little Workshop is too big. Small Box of Rock is close to too big. Kettlebell is about right, but it is an early experiment with this stuff, and so it's just not very smooth. These ones that I've been doing up here. Oh, and that reminds me of what I was fixing to do. We'll go back to Small Box of Rock, why not? But I was going to throw the early reflections back in. Pretty sure I have early volume spelled out as something. Gotta go right up here. And we just forcibly assigned that pre-delay can be whatever it wants to be, but you know what? No, I can just leave it with. Worry about that later. So now we're doing early reflections. No. What's the matter, you? Got some problem? Let's rebuild you and see whether you're any happier. Something happened. There we go. So input pad, pre-delay matters, but input pad is the amount of regeneration on there, and wetness is what's going to matter here. Then if I select this, and now if I turn this up, it'll be pre-delaying, but we won't actually be able to hear that difference. But there should be a difference between this and this, because this is no early reflections. And that is all the early reflections. In fact, let's go and put this back again. Early volume always cranked. And we have all these different options for early reflections, but let's go and dig up one that is closer to small box of rock. Or we could go back to kettlebell, but probably don't need to. And we're looking for early reflections that are not quite as quick as this. I've had these being very, very small and short. But, oh, here we go. Kettlebell and kettle arch, how about? These are early reflections, maybe the wrong sizes. That's okay. More to learn for later. My work file there. And now rather than these ones that are all way, way too short, we got apparently just kettle arch, okay. And that is a longer one. So if we switch back to kettlebell, these are all longer than the ones I started out with, but that pre-delay, that pre-echo, you should be able to notice a difference there. Because with this, where we're doing this stuff, oh, didn't like that, did it? Something went wrong. This is not on the streaming computer, thankfully, so we can have problems with this one, and it's okay. Let's build again and see if it's any happier. Shouldn't be doing anything wrong here. Let's see whether any happier this time. Well, it loaded. Let's take pre-delay back down. Ooh, there's trouble. Oh, and I know exactly why. I know exactly why. So we can safely run this as long as we don't mess with the pre-delay, because the pre-delay is not the right number that it was before. Pre-delay at 0 will let me demonstrate the thing I was talking about. Yeah, I know exactly what happened here. There's our clap. And then rather than sounding exactly like clonking some kind of hard, it sounded like claves. The attack from this sounded like claves. We apparently do want early reflections in this, because when we put wetness in, even though we don't have the option for pre-delay until I change it again, full wet now has a kind of clap-like quality rather than being like metal stick hits metal stick. Instead, there's this little slight blur. Like, there's the desired goal. We'll give her a dry back again. And you can hear what I'm talking about a little bit. That attack on the real one sounds like a clap, but without early reflections, the attack on the fake one sounds like the onset of clonking some sticks together. There's no softness to it. Whereas when we have that, it's still a little rough, but and the whole chamber is a little bit too small, maybe? Those sound very different. See, there's a high shimmery thing going on, but all the same, so it's kind of like we're getting closer, and probably we can I'm going to generate some more of these reverb impulses because none of these ones are good enough yet. But it feels more a little like we're getting into the zone where we can do something that's actually useful. Like take sounds and throw in a little chamberiness. No, the real one has almost all tail because the early reflections mix with each other immediately. So it's like all of the early reflections immediately go into forming the tail because all the walls are so close to each other. So I was trying to do it with tail only and no early reflections. And that does not actually turn out to be something that I can do. But one thing about it is that the early reflections from something that small are very loud. So stuff like this. And yeah, I don't have pre-delay, but I'll tell you what, I can add it pretty quickly. Even though we're not going to keep this, we have to change this to what it is in plate, because the rest of this comes from plate, and the pre-delay implementation is using the same thing that I had in plate, which would be this number for pre-delay. See, it's applying it, but I don't have enough delay length to use it, so we change that until that is now this. And now when I built this, it's a sort of final stream thing. See, remember when it was crashing? That is because I was trying to access stuff in an array where the array was not nearly big enough to reach out to where I was telling it to reach. So it was crashing because it was grabbing like wrong things. But now that we have done this, I have my half-second delay back. Maybe I should leave this like this. Talk to you folks later. We will continue this next week.